Hey, this is Carl Leopson at the University of Arizona, and this is a video made specifically for SERP 590 students. I wanted to explain in a little more detail about multiple baseline designs across behaviors, across participants, and across settings, and when each of those situations is applicable. And I wanted to do it by looking at some of the research questions for projects that students in this class are working on right now. So let's do some quick examples. I have a blank graph over here, and for the sake of things, we're going to consider that academic engagement is the dependent variable for most of these examples. Let's start with Isaacon. She's got this idea that she would like to provide minority students with readings about their minority history or identity and see how that affects their academic engagement. She could do a multiple baseline design, right? She can't really do a withdrawal design because once kids start to learn about their ethnic identity, you can't really remove that. So frankly, a multiple baseline design is going to be her best choice. So what she would do, she could do this across students. Probably the best bet for her is to do it across participants, but across groups of participants. So she could have participants in, let's say she had three sixth grade classrooms. So she'd have 6-1. She could have class she could call 6-2, and she could have a classroom she would call 6-3. And when she would be taking measures of academic engagement, she would be getting an overall measure of academic engagement for the classroom. So let's say she started getting an overall measure of academic engagement for this sixth grade classroom, and they were not highly academically engaged over 3 sessions. Same thing with classroom 2, but they showed a little higher engagement, but their baseline was a little more erratic. And then for the third classroom, she's looking at their overall academic engagement on assignments. Remember, they haven't begun to do the readings on ethnic identity yet, and these folks are actually starting to increase. We definitely don't want to start with them. So we start with this first sixth grade classroom, and we start to provide them with readings on ethnic identity, and what we hope to see is some increase in their academic engagement. Maybe it's not just readings on ethnic identity, maybe we're incorporating it into the lessons somehow, right? And they start to see this instruction as more valid and more meaningful to them. While at the same time, we continue to collect data in this other sixth grade classroom where we're not doing that yet. We've implemented here. This group stays kind of like as a control, and the third group stays like as a control. So both these groups, these guys are just go wacky. Let's say their baseline is just really not very stable at all. So once we see a stable improvement with the first group, we start with the next group. And hopefully what we start to see is they also show an improvement. And we continue to collect data in both of these groups, right? So we collect data in the first sixth grade classroom we started with and the second sixth grade classroom. And this one, we continue to collect data here, and finally their baseline stabilizes or shows a slightly downward trend, and then we implement in that classroom, and hopefully we also start to see improvements there while we continue to collect data in these other classrooms. So that's one reasonable example of how you could do a multiple baseline across students, or these aren't really students, across participants. Participants can be individuals, they can be whole classrooms. In this case, it's a whole classroom of kids. Could be individuals. We could be looking at individuals in different classes if we wanted to. Hard to do this one with individuals in the same classroom because I can't imagine teaching providing one kid in that classroom with a sense of ethnic identity and the others not. I don't know how you would separate that out. Okay, so probably her best bet is to do multiple baseline across individuals in different classrooms or across whole classrooms. Okay. Um, let's think about this for, let's keep the data looking the same, because we want the same type of result to happen. But let's consider this for the different folks and their research questions. Let's think about Shayna. I love Shayna's research question that has to do with providing, she wants to see the effect of providing students with experience or work in a school or community garden with the impact on their academic engagement in the classroom. Okay. The same layout applies. She could do this with individuals. Okay, so you could have Sarah. First of all, she could do it with whole classrooms, right? She could have different classrooms, measure their overall academic engagement, and then one at a time, these classroom groups of kids start to get experience out in the garden at a certain time of day. And then you continue to measure their academic engagement during a specific time of day. We can't really measure all day long. That's a little out of control. But she could also do individuals if she wanted to pick out individuals. So we've got Sarah, we've got Jose, and let's say we've got Marcus. And so you could do this across individuals. You could give first, Sarah would be the first one to get experience out in the garden. We keep collecting data on Jose and Marcus. Jose comes next in getting the garden experience out in the garden, while Sarah continues to get work in the garden. This is a situation where certainly we could do this as a withdrawal. You wouldn't have to use a multiple baseline design. You could do an A-B design where you actually remove the intervention, remove the work in the garden. You might run into ethical problems with that. You might run into the issue that, I don't know, you might just be more ethical than anything else. You can also run into problems when teachers don't want to do it. They won't let you take away the intervention, or when parents won't let you take away the intervention. Okay. So Shayna could do hers across individuals. She could do it across whole groups of participants. I don't think it's going to work well across individual behaviors for one participant. Let's say this whole graph was about Sarah, and we identified 3 different behaviors for Sarah, like this wasn't just academic engagement. Say we had 3 different behaviors, like staying in seat, working on assignments, and asking questions. The problem is you're implementing the garden work all at one time. So you're expecting it's going to have an effect on all, it would have an effect on all 3 behaviors. Why would it have a different effect on all 3 behaviors if you implemented it with this kid, with Sarah, in the morning, right? So it's not likely going to work across behaviors. Not many interventions can you separate out across behaviors, unless you are doing something like teaching in it, using a specific model of teaching for a specific type of behavior or in a specific type of setting. Let's take Aaron's question, for example. Using a specific type of counseling intervention and seeing what effect it has on improving the attendance at other vocational rehabilitation services. So this one, let's say it's not academic engagement, it's actually attendance. But attendance at, what are some other kinds of voc services? So let's say job hunting and resume development. So they say these are separate classes. Resume class and a work habits class. Okay. So she could do this as a multiple baseline across these different job services, but only if the counseling intervention is provided right before that service. Okay. If she says, well, I'm going to collect data on how much this person attends a job hunting class, they don't attend well. Look, they don't attend the resume class very frequently, and they don't attend the work habits class very frequently. Now I'm going to have every week have a counseling session with this person um, that should improve their attendance. How would it be targeted specifically at the job hunting class or the resume class or the work habits class? Now, if that counseling was just a small addendum to the job hunting class, if what you did was have the job hunting class, right? Job hunting class plus counseling, like a 10 to 15 minute session there before or after the job hunting class that wasn't replicated in the resume class and wasn't replicated in the work habits class, then you might see separate effects in job hunting versus resume class versus work habits. But otherwise, if you're just having one counseling session and hoping to affect all of those, then you can't really affect them separately, Aaron. So you wouldn't be able to organize it that way. You're going to have to run it across participants. So you could have Sarah, you could have Jose, and you could have, Marcos, right? And so all three of them are attending services, other folk rehab services. None of them attending well. You implement your counseling sessions with Sarah, and she starts to show better attendance, overall attendance at rehab services. When she starts to show a change in behavior, you implement with Jose. He starts to show a change in behavior, you implement with Marcos, while collecting data across all three at the same time, showing that your intervention continues to have an effect. So your best bet is going to be across individuals, right? Unless the counseling session is organized kind of in the way I discussed. Okay. Kimberly is looking at weighted vests. Weighted vests and their use for her with kids identified with ADHD. That's interesting because it's most often used with kids with autistic like behaviors, or kids with autism. And so she could do it. She could use this across different individuals, right? She could use Sarah, Jose, and Marcos, each showing wacky behaviors, and then you implement the vest with Sarah while you don't with Jose and Marcos. Okay. She could also do, though, an A-B. She can do a withdrawal design very easily. You have the vest available, the vest's not available. So she may not want to do a multiple baseline unless somebody says it's unethical to take back the vest once you use it or once you provide it. And you may have people say that. So your decision to do a withdrawal design or a multiple baseline design might often have something to do with whether or not there are how people feel about the intervention that you're presenting and how you present it. Okay. So you could do this across students. Okay. You could have this for one student like Sarah. Let's say this is across math class and language arts and history class. So you check on her academic engagement or behavior in all three classes. You make the vest available in math class, but not in language arts and history until you show that it works in math class, and then you make it available in language arts, you make it available in history. Okay. Probably not appropriate across behaviors because you're saying that the weighted vest has an effect, unless there are different behaviors going on in different classrooms, and that's a possibility. I think those are probably enough examples for right now. This video's running into 15 minutes. It is nice to get a chance to talk to you, though, and to present something kind of face to face. I'll try to do a few more of these. Let me know if this helps explain the issues of multiple baseline designs across students, settings, and behaviors. And I'll see you some more in the future. Bye bye.